had lost everything in my life and had to completely rebuild it. And I had an opportunity at that moment to figure out, how do I want to rebuild this? What do I want my life to look like? I chose that as an opportunity and began to rebuild my life in the way that I wanted and let go of the things that were no longer working for me. I just felt like I was out in the world alone and just white knuckling it, trying to figure it out and feeling scared, but having to show up and pretend that I had it all together. The truth is that you yourself, who you were created as, is amazing. And if you could learn to show up just as that person, that is a win.
Hello, Project Ultimate Lifers. Welcome. Today we have Shauna here, who is a growth coach and spiritual mentor. She's going to be sharing her experiences and how she has come to help people along their path to be able to rise into the best version of their selves and ultimately live their ultimate lives. So, Shauna, can you share with us a little bit about your journey and what led you to become a growth coach and spiritual mentor?
I can. I first want to say thank you for the opportunity to share my story. And it's so nice to meet you, Jess. And so I'm excited to meet some of your followers. So, you know, if you had told me years ago I'd be here today on this podcast or helping women and men step out of overwhelm and into freedom, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Because to be honest, I was the one stuck in stress, stuck in overwhelm, and stuck in like these crazy patterns in my life, which you'll hear in my story. And so as I spent years trying to manage my life, I mean, like we probably all can identify, like trying to manage the outside of your life, like all the things that are happening, all the situations, all the relationships that are failed in and out, and not realizing that there might be something going on deeper inside of me and that I might be part of the problem of why my life is so unmanageable and really chaotic. So, what it led me to was this, I would say, a long journey, to be honest, because it started many, many years ago. And it's taken me a bunch of twists and turns to finally get where I am at today. But being able to look back at my life now and see that, like, I don't believe that everything had to happen the way that it did, but there was always a message. There was always, um, some type of nugget, some kind of learning thing, something that catapulted me into the next season of life. So I don't look at it as regret. I look at it as everything was like a learning experience and it got me to the person that I am today. So it's helped me to appreciate it instead of hate it or, not allow it to be part of my story.
Absolutely. So you said that it's been a long journey. Where did it kind of start? Oftentimes, when we go through some form of a transformation, it's either one big moment where we're just like, that's it, or it's a lot of little moments that kind of add up to create this, all right, something's got to change moment. Where did that start for you?
I think it was a lot of little moments. And then I also had some big moments along the journey that actually was like it shook me. But it really started whenever I was younger. I was raised in a family where I was the oldest of four kids. My mom remarried, and so two of my siblings were half siblings with my stepdad. My mom and my stepdad had them. And I just always felt different, like always felt different from the other kids, always felt different from like the family dynamic. And I always wanted more than like what I saw. And I don't mean that like selfishly, like I just wanted more. Like I just knew there was more to life. I just knew that like there was more to this life that I was given to live, that I wanted to like find out like my purpose, and I wanted to figure out what passion was put inside of me. And so at a very young age, even though I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, there was like my mom had mental illness, my stepdad was an alcoholic. So there's a lot of chaos in the home. I just always felt like there was something more out there. And so it kind of started then, like that journey of wanting to discover what else is out there for me. And then, of course, because the situation I was raised in, like I said, I took the long journey. I didn't go to college because I couldn't afford it. And my parents, weren't able to support me. I moved out when I was 17 and really began a life as an adult, trying to figure it out. And, I needed to support myself. So I didn't have a whole lot of disposable income to be learning things, but I found ways that I could grab a hold of things that I could. So, like reading a book, or, back then you didn't have podcasts, but you could watch different shows that you could learn things about. And so that was kind of my journey. But beginning to step into this, I would say it was a single moment issue. When I was an adult, I was 30 years old. I had, had a long trail of broken relationships and broken situations and a lot of running away from who I was, or who I was afraid I was, I guess was more accurate. And so what I call my blow up my life situation, where I literally ended up with nothing. Like I had lost everything in my life and had to completely rebuild it. And I had an opportunity at that moment um, to figure out, like, how do I want to rebuild this? What do I want my life to look like? Because I have nothing, and now is an opportunity for me. And I chose that as an opportunity and began to rebuild my life in the way that I wanted, and to put the right people in my life, and to be around the right things, and to put the right things into my mind, and let go of the things that were no longer working for me. And I had some areas where I had some unforgiveness. I had to work through that. And so I just began this journey of rebuilding me. And that led me to what I'm doing today.
That's amazing. I want to go back to something that you mentioned because I think a lot of people can relate to this. You said you grew up in a lot of chaos and your stepdad was an alcoholic. How did that show up for you later in life? How did that chaos, how did that, maybe potentially lack of stability or lack of perceived safety or however that impacted or affected you, how did that show up?
Wow. Like, I feel like now I can look back and see how it really showed up in my life. You mentioned lack of safety. I didn't even know what that looked like. Like, I didn't know what safety felt like. I can remember like just feeling like I was always on pins and needles, like just waiting for something to blow up, waiting for a situation, where I was going to have to be on guard. And I wasn't physically abused, but there was just a lot of like mental abuse and psychological abuse whenever you're raised with an alcoholic parent, because you just don't know what to expect. So you're always on guard, and you never really feel safe within yourself, and it leads you to believe, at least for me, that you really can't do anything right. Like everything that you do is just going to fall apart. And so I think moving into adulthood, even though I left home at a young age and had always been what you call like pretty responsible, I felt like a little kid out in the world. Like I didn't have a lot of the, I would say, mental or, even spiritual aspects to myself. I just felt like I was out in the world alone and just white knuckling it, trying to figure it out and feeling scared, but having to show up and pretend that I had it all together. And so it created this really an avatar, if you will. Like I showed up in the world how I felt like other people needed me to be, because that's what I learned to do when I was growing up. And what it did is like it didn't allow me the space to get to know myself, because I never even showed up as Shauna. I showed up as whatever you needed me to be. If you needed me to be strong, I would be strong. So I became the strong girl. I became very independent, not needing people, but being there for everyone else. And, through that, obviously, I lost sight of who I was and what I wanted and the things that I enjoyed to do. And so through my journey, coming back to myself, those are some really key questions that I got to ask myself, is like, what do I even like to do? What's in my heart? What makes me happy? I remember whenever I was building my life back up, someone had asked me a simple question about like, what's your favorite food to eat? And I was like, I don't really know. What's your favorite food? I mean, that's how much I had depleted myself of myself, as I couldn't even answer those really simple questions.
I remember one of my most empowering moments was I was 23 and I decided for the first time my favorite color was royal blue. I'd always like kind of liked blue, knew it deep down, but any color someone would say, because I have similar experiences to you as you're just stating, I would always be like, oh, what's yours? I settled on pink at 18. I hate pink because it was my best friend from college favorite color. Like I kind of went with it, you know? So I can really relate to that. How did some of your earlier experiences sort of influence how you showed up or what you thought relationships look like or contributed sort of to the relationship aspect of life?
Yeah, so looking at like the model that I had with my mom and my stepdad, who um honestly, like the perspective I had was like, honestly, marriage is like jail. It's like prison. Like you weren't allowed to be you and you weren't allowed to have fun, and like there wasn't this independence in it. It felt very like ball and chain, like the people like people a lot of people talk about. And I think that when I began to get into relationships, what I realized was that I was very codependent, because I was needing somebody to tell me that I was good enough, to tell me that I was worthy. But the people that I was finding in relationships um, were, well, let's say immature, because I was immature. Like I was finding people on my level, even though I was wanting like something more, but I hadn't done the work. So I wasn't bringing that same frequency. I was bringing the same frequency that I was, which was wounded, which was insecure and codependent. And so that created a lot of issues in relationships. And, I'm on my third marriage now. My third and final marriage is what I say. Um, but my first marriage, really, I got married because, well, I was moving out and I was dating this guy. And so we ended up moving in together because I needed a roommate, to be honest. I mean, I'm 17 years old trying to figure out life on my own. And then I just kind of felt stuck. Like that was what I had to do because that's what he wanted to do. So we got married. We were married for about 6 months. Nothing wrong with him. Just we weren't, he wasn't the guy for me. I wasn't the girl for him. I'll just say that. And so, but I did what I do, which is run away. Like I just ran away from that situation. And then fast forward about 4 years later, I met somebody else. We lived together for a couple of years and we weren't even planning on getting married, but someone talked us into it because they felt like marriage was what we needed to do. I live in Texas, and at this time I lived in the Bible Belt. It was like, you don't need to live with him. You need to, if you're going to be together, y'all need to be married. So we got married, and he's the father of my two children. But our relationship was really a cookie cutter of what I lived in. There was addiction, there was chaos, there was, a lot of walking on eggshells. It wasn't abusive per se, but it just wasn't a place to like raise my kids. Like it wasn't a place for me to grow. And so we ended up divorcing after 9 years. And honestly, that was the point where my life blew up. Like that decision created a lot of um, stuff in my life. I ended up getting addicted to drugs for a while. I left my family, lost my children to CPS, and had to fight the battle back to get all that back. Um, I honestly don't feel like I would have ever left my husband though, had that not happened. Had I not, I mean, literally lit a match, put gasoline, and like blew up my life because at that point it was so broken that I had no choice but to rebuild. And I'm not saying that's right for everybody. So I'm not saying go blow up your life. But I know for me, like it was part of my story that was so integral about it. Like I learned so much through that process. I was left alone. So my kids were with my in-laws. My husband was gone and I was in like, and he had left, like he wasn't even in the same city I was in anymore. And so rebuilding looked like me finding a new community, finding new friends, um, And I had a choice to make, like, what people did I want in my life? And so I joined a group where I could meet like-minded people, where I could go on this journey of rebuilding. And that was really the part that like left me into, okay, changing my life, creating a whole new, like, who am I? Understanding who that is and beginning to even know that, like, deep down, like, I'm a good person. Like I know that I've done a lot of bad things, but that doesn't make me a bad person. And so that kind of began the journey of being able to feel safe enough and strong enough and have enough courage to look within, because I had heard a lot of stuff along my journey, that my heart wasn't good, that I was very selfish, or things like that that we hear along our journey that stick with us. And I began to unlearn some of those things that I had learned to begin to get to know exactly who it is that I am.
Hmm. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. Absolutely. So, there are a lot of people in your same situation where they feel like they've made choices that they're not the most proud of, right? Or they're stuck in situations that they don't know how to get out of. What do you say to your clients to kind of help them feel, not even so much to help them, but what would you say to your clients to start to get them to think about other alternatives other than their situation? Because there's a lot of things like fear holds people back, so many different things. How would you how would you support somebody who was going through that?
So, with the program that we've created, it's a 16-week program, and people come to us because they already know that there's some kind of problem or some situation that they keep running into a wall. Or some people, it's like their life got blown up in front of them. It's divorce, a spouse left them, issues with children, things like that. So when they come to us, they're aware that there's a problem. So that's the first thing, is like knowing that you have something that you're wanting to change, you're wanting to overcome. Could be that just a stressful environment. And then when that happens, then we begin to ask them some questions to try to help them understand, like, where their heart is in this. Like, what is their deep ingrained subconscious beliefs about certain things, specifically ourselves, sometimes others. And when we begin to learn, like, that there is some other programming that's running your life, not actually the understanding or the intelligence that you have today. Like, I was 30 years old, and I wasn't running with 30-year-old Shauna programming. I was running, whenever I blew my life up, I was running with a child programming. So this, 5, 6, 7-year-old programming that I had was running my life. And it was then at that moment that I took some, inventory and realized that something else was going on underneath. And I had an opportunity to change it. And the opportunity is really just that. Like, I have an opportunity to acknowledge, to become aware that something else is going on within me. Because when I look back at my life, there's a lot of patterns that are very much the same. And did I want to live my life with that same pattern? And so that's the first thing that we do, is we determine, what is it, who's running the show. And then once we do that, is we get in touch with those parts of us, and to really check in with what's going on within you. And throughout our program, we have ways of doing that, different techniques that we use. But I would say, if someone's listening and they're feeling like part of my story feels like theirs, or their heart is like paying attention and really wanting to be seen and valued, one of the things that we teach our clients to do is, when we get triggered, and that just means that we have, an emotion, or some type of reaction to a situation that doesn't match the reaction. So if I all of a sudden have this huge emotion or this feeling, but it's not matching the situation, then I want to take note of that. And whenever I can, sometimes you can't do it because you're like in the middle of a podcast, or you're talking to somebody, or you're in a situation where you can't just like pause and talk to your heart. But you can, whenever you get a chance, just go back to that emotion that you were feeling and begin to ask yourself a few questions and listen for the answers. Because our heart, that subconscious part of us, is always wanting to speak when we give ourselves time to do that. And that was something that when I was running from this and that and trying to keep everything at bay and managing my life, I wasn't taking time to listen to what was going on inside. And I'd really lost that internal voice. And I think a lot of us get there, we just kind of lose that intuition. We lose that ability to really check in with us and see what's going on. But what you can do is just simply say, hey, we got upset. And I say we because there is many parts to me. And just like there's many parts to all of us, we can feel happy and sad in the same moment. We can be, excited and anxious in the same time. So there's different parts of us that are vying to speak to us. And when we just simply check in and say, hey, it was a big emotion. We were, sad or, scared or, whatever. And then just listen. What is it that you want me to know? And see what comes up. There could be a memory, there could be a word, there could be just an understanding of something that can lead you into a dialogue where you can begin to listen and be a safe place for yourself in those moments where you have big reactions and we just don't always know where they come from. This is when we begin to see that something else, some other programming is running our life, not actually our intelligence of today.
So, trauma is something that people are talking a lot about now, a lot more than ever. How would you kind of define trauma and how does that show up for people differently?
So, trauma is so things happen to us, like things that are bad happen to us or things that are shocking. And those are like situations that we don't like, but that's not actually the trauma. The trauma is whatever happens in you. It's the way that it changes my belief, it's the way that it changes me. And that's the piece that we really want to dig into. So, a divorce, that's a very terrible thing for a lot of people. A breakup of a relationship, a friendship. Those are really terrible things. A loss of someone that you love, really terrible things, but it's what it does in you. It's how we have processed the information. It's how we have not processed the information. A lot of times we don't know how to grieve. We don't know how to experience loss. We don't know how to walk through these traumatic things. If somebody is mugged on the street, like that is an experience that, yes, is traumatic, but the trauma is what happens within you. So it's how you experience that within. And we have a way of remembering, our body does, everything that happens to us. And when we don't learn to process through the situation and allow that emotion to fully process through and to put it in the right context and have an understanding of it, then it gets stuck within us. And when that gets stuck within us, then it aligns with programming that we can have from all different types of childhood trauma, or it could be a situational trauma. If we've never learned how to process that stuff, it gets stuck and then it changes who we are. And so, what we do is we help you kind of backtrack and rewire that situation so then you can walk through life not being eclipsed or overcome or, shocked by these reactions that we have in life when it gets triggered. That part of us gets triggered and we end up, reacting in a way that we wished we hadn't.
Hmm. You had mentioned this earlier or said doing the work. How would you define doing the work? What is doing the work? We hear this a lot. If you're going to be in a relationship or if you're going to do this, you got to do the work. What is the work? And what does that mean for people and how can they apply it to their lives?
That's such a good question because you're right. It's used so often and sometimes it's not clear like what is the work? And for me, the work is being present with yourself. The work is knowing what is happening within you. The work is, trying to limit those reactions. And that doesn't mean like cover it up or hide it. It's like being present with me so I know when something is triggering me, I'm not just going to lash out at this person. I'm going to be aware, wow, that triggered me. And so then I'm going to then do the work to see what it is that was triggered, because when somebody triggers an emotion within me, guess what? That's not their fault or their problem. It's mine. I'm the one who was triggered, and I'm the one that gets to figure out what it was that triggered me and why. And that's the work. It's just checking in with you. It's learning your body. It's being able to be in tune with your body, your soul, spirit, and your body, all that being in alignment. It's heart coherence. And that's the place where we all want to be, where we're not just being swayed here and there by what's happening in the news or what so and so said about us or how somebody treated us in the line or driving. It's like being aware that we have agency, that somebody else doesn't get to determine how I feel or see, that my perspective gets to be through the lens of truth, not through the lens of what someone else's opinion is. And so that's what I would say the work is. The work is to, get to my goal is heart brain coherence, is for my heart and my brain to be synced up so that neither one is taking the lead. Both of them are functioning in light of truth, so that I'm not being caught off guard. I'm not being pulled off sides, that I'm able to really stay present no matter what the situation is and have access to wisdom, which is going to help the world at large because I can walk in love. I can show up and I can give instead of need to receive. I can be a person that changes the world and changes the atmospheres just by showing up fully, present within my body.
Do you have any strategies? So self-awareness is huge, right? What strategies, if I'm a person who I'm not very aware, I'm not even aware that I'm not aware quite yet. How do I become more aware of this awareness that I need to have? And what can I do to increase my self-awareness?
That was me. I mean, I had no idea I was not aware. In fact, I would have told you I was so aware. But what I was aware of was everyone else. I was not aware of myself. And I've always had that hyper vigilance, like so aware of situations, could read the atmosphere, could tell if something was off, but I wasn't aware of me. And I think that's probably with a lot of people. And I'm not saying everyone's like this, but when we have this understanding of awareness, what we realize is that the way that we are begins to affect the people around us. And so awareness is seeing something off in someone else and then checking in to see if there's something off within myself. Because I think what I did for years was look at everybody else and judge that, but didn't have the awareness to see that that might have been coming from me. Because the way that we view life, reality, is through the lens of how we are, not actually the way that it is. And I'll explain that a little bit because we all have a way of seeing the world. It's our perspective. And we don't realize that our perspective is simply our perspective, that reality is created through our perspective. And so everybody actually has a different reality that they're living in, which is pretty crazy when we think about it. But
Hmm.
when you think about it, it's very true because the way that you look at life, Jess, is going to be different from mine. Even if it's a little different, it's still going to be different because of our own experiences, the way that we understand the world, and the way that we see ourselves in it, how we engage with others. And so I tell this story a lot whenever I'm teaching is that I used to have a mindset of when I walked into a room, it could be a party or it could be an event. I had an expectation, even though I didn't know this, I had an expectation that I was going to be um like not paid attention to. Like I was going to be what is the word I'm looking for?
Ignored.
Yeah, but even like deeper than that. But you guys knew what I'm saying. Like I had an expectation that I wasn't going to be paid attention to, that people weren't going to like me, that I was always going to have to try harder. Like I had that expectation. Um, and so when I would walk in a room, what was I looking for? I wasn't looking for the people that were like engaging with me or smiling at me. I was looking for the ones that maybe were frowning or not paying attention or doing something else. That was what I saw. So my reality was other people don't pay attention to me. And so that's what I experienced. But if I fast forward now, I walk into a room and it's not that I expect everybody to like me, but I walk in knowing that I'm bringing something to the atmosphere. Like I shift the energy. And so I look at it very differently. And so when I walk into a room now, I'm looking for smiles. I'm looking for people that are engaging with that energy that I believe that I'm bringing. And so that's my reality today. So we simply create the life that we're living because of the internal world that we have inside of us. And so that's how we can look at it, very differently. It's like, what is my perspective today? And what do I want to change about it? Like when I am feeling down, when I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling ignored, or, whatever, what is it that I'm giving? Like, do I believe these things about myself? And so those are some keys or some clues on what you can begin to work on, to do the work, to be able to, walk into a room and feel completely different. And trust me, like this is not hard work. It's just being consistent with it, being aware, letting yourself like check in with what's going on within you, and allowing those parts of you to speak so that you even know what it is that you want to work on. Because it's important that we don't just try to change the behavior, like, okay, I'm going to cheer myself up, I'm going to put my, song on, and I'm going to go in this room and I'm going to be, release all this good energy. But we can't manipulate like what's within us. That has to be something that's authentic, because we can't change what we release, like the joy, the excitement. We can't change that if we're not doing the work within, because that's what energy will be released. It won't be the stuff that we're trying to lay on top of it. And so it's important that we don't try to just change the behavior, that we really do check in and see what it is that is going on within us. And to be honest, the easiest way to do that is with a coach. It's really difficult to do it by yourself. So my encouragement is to find somebody that can walk the journey with you, because it's so important to have not only that coach to like give you, guardrails, but also to be a cheerleader for you, because sometimes we really don't pay attention to all the things that we're doing that is good, that we're making these micro changes that are big changes in the big picture, because those micro changes will be the things that when you look up in 6 months that have made the big difference.
Absolutely. There are a couple points I want to touch on, and one of them is that you talked a lot about energy. So I know I get energy. I understand what you're saying. I have a Reiki master. I've even had my own spiritual healing coach. So I really am aware what that means. But somebody could hear it and just think energy. Are you talking about the lights? Energy. Okay, I kind of know what you're talking about, how good you feel in your body, right? What is energy? And how does that come out and show up?
So, um, so the Heart Math Institute back in the 90s proved that we have energy or frequency, if you will, that comes out of our heart and actually creates this aura, if you will, around us, about 8 to 10 feet out. And so it's simply just information. That's what energy is. It's information that is not able to be seen, but it's able to be felt. And we, if you think about the easiest way for me to explain energy is if you walk into a room and we've all felt like, oh, there's something off here. Not sure what it is, but something just feels off. That's energy. You're feeling the energy of the room. Or if you walk in and you're like, oh, this feels really good. I like this. That's energy. When you feel a certain way about a song that you love, that's energy. And so it's information that's being sent through the quantum realm. You can call it the field, whatever you want to call it. And so it's just simply information that your body's able to read, your subconscious, because your subconscious doesn't speak in words, and more picks up on energy, feelings, emotions, pictures, things like that. And so we all have it. I believe that we were all born with a frequency. We have a song that, I believe in God. God sings over us, and that's our frequency. And whenever we get it out of alignment with who we are, like for me, all those years trying to be somebody else, I had a really distorted frequency. So it was really hard for people to read who I was. Like they didn't know because I didn't know. But as you get healing and your heart and your brain have this coherence, then you begin to walk in your frequency. And when you do that, you'll begin to feel what other frequencies work or don't work with you. And I think it's just like a guiding light for you to determine where you need to go, what you need to do, who you need to be with. Because I believe that the people that you're supposed to be in relationship with, you'll know it energetically. You'll just know it.
Absolutely. How do our insecurities, first, what is an insecurity? And then two, how do our insecurities impact our frequencies or our energies that we're giving out?
I think an insecurity, I think of it like in the attachment theory. So there's secure attachment and there's three insecure attachment styles, basically. And secure attachment just means that you're good with yourself. You don't need others. You enjoy to be around others. You learn the boundaries, what's good for you, who you are, things that you like, and then you don't need to change those to be liked or wanted in relationships. And so it allows you to have full authenticity of who you are instead of needing the attachment over authenticity. You honor and value yourself just as much as you would honor and value someone else. And then there's different kinds of insecure attachment. So in one of them is an anxious type where it's just overly needing people. I would call that more of a codependency, where I need others to feel okay. I need others to tell me that I'm okay, tell me that I'm worthy. And then there's an avoidant type where they honestly pretend they don't need other people and they believe that to a degree. But deep down, they really want to be close with people. They just don't know how to because they just were never taught how to be close to people. They have a huge fear of being seen because they believe deeply that they're defective in some way. And so they will fight tooth and nail to hide, to not be seen. That was me, like showing up in an avatar. It was very comfortable to be needed by other people, but for me to need other people was very uncomfortable. And so then there's a third type, which is called disorganized, and it really mimics both of them. And that happens with people that were raised in very chaotic home lives where there's maybe abuse or neglect, where there was severe situations where they just never knew like what was going to show up, how their parents were, if they were going to be cared for. They probably didn't trust their parents very much. And so that shows up with kind of both the anxious and the avoidant, depending on what type of relationship that they're in and what situation. Um, and so the important thing to know is if you find yourself in insecurity, and we have these reactions of anxious or avoidant, that is not a death sentence. Like, you're not stuck there. This is something that we can all move in and out of. And so there's probably very small population that stays insecure all the time, but there's a huge population that are mostly secure, and they just kind of move in and out of whatever attachment style they had as a child, depending on like if they're pushed to stress environments or overwhelmed. They can pop in and out of those, and so it's just something to be aware of. I mean, I still pop into avoidant whenever I'm pushed or there's a situation where I just don't feel myself. I can easily in moments like pop into insecurity, and I'm aware of it now. And so when that happens, I can do the work that we just talked about to check in and see what's going on. But it's easy to move into secure attachment. It is not something that you have to work super hard at. In fact, our 16-week program can get you into a place where you live mostly in secure attachment. And of course, like I said, we're still going to be triggered at different times, but those are the moments that we get to check in with ourselves and become more intimate with who we are and understand the goings of what's happening within us and heal those parts of our heart that didn't get healed before.
Mm, absolutely. That's beautiful. If somebody is feeling like overwhelmed and stressed and these types of things, what sort of strategies, mindfulness, meditation, energy work do you recommend to kind of move out of those states and back into a more secure, content, healthy state?
Yeah, I would say like all the things that you mentioned. I feel like the quickest one and easiest one to master is breathing. And there's a simple breathing technique that I teach everybody, all our clients, and I use it often. And it's box breathing. It's super easy. You can, I just say count of five because it's just an easy one. So you inhale for a count of five, you hold for a count of five at the top, you exhale for a count of five, and you hold for a count of five at the bottom. And you just do that as much as you need to do it until you feel like you're back in the body. Because what happens when we're in overwhelm or stress, we actually leave our body. Our energy leaves our body. And in the box breathing, we're calling it back to us. And so you can even say that I'm calling my energy back to me. I want to get into a state of one, a state of peace. And so you just begin this box breathing. And if you pray or if you meditate, you can also do it at that time too. You can think of a serene place. I have a picture of a place that brings me a lot of peace. And it's something that I've encountered in my meditations, encounters with God. And so it's a place that I can go. So I can close my eyes, I can do my box breathing, I can see myself at this place, and I can immediately come back into the body and be at peace. And so that's really the easiest one. Of course, I have some free resources that I'm happy to tell you about. We have guided encounters, which are all kinds of different topics that are free on YouTube and Spotify. The channel is The Undivided Heart for both of those. And they can lead you into a journey of coming back into your body. Doing a body scan is really powerful. I also have a guided encounter with that one as well. But just being able to check, like start at the top of your head and see your head, your eyes, your mouth, your neck, and just go down all the way to your toes. And then begin to expel yourself back into your body, wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes. That helps as well. And, giving yourself that pause, just allowing yourself just a moment, close your eyes. There's nothing like getting back into the body and realizing that everything that you need is within you. And when we stop looking outside of us for the things that we need and begin to see that we carry like wisdom, we carry beauty, you know, all of the creation is connected to you in that moment. And so you have all access to all resources, all wisdom. And allowing yourself that space to get back into the body allows you that time to really apprehend the peace that you need to move into whatever direction it is that you want to go.
Oh, love it. That's so well said.
Thank you.
This conversation has come up for me many times in the last, forever, it seems like. How would you define spirituality? Not necessarily through a religious lens, or you can match a religious lens to it, but what is spirituality? How would you define it? How can people work on their spirituality if they weren't religious, are religious, etc.?
So for me, spirituality is really being connected with um, your spirit and then realizing that. So no matter what your belief is, if you believe in the quantum field or the universe as the one, the creator, or the um the space, or you believe in God, like it doesn't matter truly, because the energy is the same. I mean, I have a belief that God is love, and that love is the energy of the quantum field, like that that we're all connected to that space. And so we're all siblings. We're all family. And when you look at it like that, that's spirituality. It's the things that you can't see. It's the information, the wisdom that comes from the ancient one, whoever that is that you believe in. And I just believe that when we connect with love, we connect with the authenticity of who we are, which is the highest level of love, then we are aligning with ultimate truth. We're aligning with purpose. We're aligning with love and allowing those things within us to come out. We're engaging with ancient wisdom. We're engaging with, love and the like our creation. We're engaging with our ancestors, all of that you want to believe. But I believe that like as we connect that way, then what we're doing is we're bringing everything back to healing. Like my healing is is happening and so is someone else's, but my healing happened because someone else did their healing. Like it's all connected. And when we look at it like that, I I just think that that creates a space where we're more loving and kind to people and also have a lot of patience and love and compassion for the ones who just don't know because they haven't been awakened to that. They just don't know. They're not aware of that connection. But we get to the ones that are awakened into spirituality, we get to hold space for that. And so there is no space and time in the spiritual world. Like everything is happening all at the same time. So there was this really cool research project that was done, I don't know how many years ago, but it was about these people that have been given these patients to pray for. I think they were Christians and they were giving these patients to pray for. And so each of them were praying for the patients. And so there's two parts of patients. One section of patients that got prayed for, one set of patients didn't. And they found that the ones that got prayed for healed faster. But the cool thing about it was these patients that they were praying for had died 50 years ago. They weren't even alive anymore. And
Wow.
so, what that shows you is that there's no time and space in the spiritual world, which is happening synonymously with what we see today. And so, what you do today, your healing, your beliefs, your meditation, your good thoughts changes our world at large. It changes so much. And that doesn't even make sense to me in my mind. Like I'm still trying to figure out how that happened because it's like mind blown, right? But it's true.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I think one thing that people encounter a lot, maybe if they're not connected or they are connected, either way, fear is very real, right? Uncertainty is very real for people. Oh, I want to do this thing, but what if, right? The what ifs are sometimes overwhelming or can sort of take over. How do you help clients navigate fear and uncertainty in your programs? How do you help kind of guide them past what are very significant and real roadblocks for people?
Yeah, it's good because you're right. I think a lot of people are inundated with fear and insecurity. And so we really teach them to look at it head on. So we talk about what the fear is. We talk about what that feeling is, where they feel it in their body, and then we begin to just kind of take it back to where did this come from? So going back to the limiting belief systems, we find what it is that's creating that fear because that fear and uncertainty probably comes from a time in your life where you didn't have um you didn't have certainty, where maybe even bad things really did happen to you. And so there's a part of you that's still living in that time of your life. And it's, like I said before, it's that pattern or that programming that shows up and creates the perspective of how you see life. And so, whenever you can really figure out where that fear is coming from, because yes, it could be something that's happening in the world. Somebody said something, or something's happening that's attaching that fear, but it came from something further back, typically something in your life where things didn't go right. And so enough of those things didn't go right that created a belief of we need to fear something bad's going to happen to us. But really, fear is just a lack of love in your life. Like you just weren't loved the way that you should have been loved. You weren't seen, you weren't validated, you were left alone. And you think about, a young person left alone without any help, it creates a lot of fear because you're living in a world where, as a young person, you don't have a lot of opportunities. You don't have things that you can do. And so if it's all on you and you're 5 years old, well, of course you're going to show up and be afraid of certain situations. So remembering that there's no judgment for having the fear, but if you want to alleviate it, we got to get back to what it is that's causing it. What's driving that fear in you? And it's to protect you. That's what's showing up. It's showing up to keep you away from the thing that's going to hurt you. But, these parts of our heart don't realize that we're not 5 years old anymore. We're much older than that. We're adults. We have ability to, protect ourselves or to stay away from those things or to see it a different way. And when we get our, those parts of our heart connected back to the truth of where you're at and what opportunities you have and how the world is today, your world, your reality, then that you don't find yourself being stuck in that fear and uncertainty. Now, there are always going to be things in life that we don't know. There's always going to be uncertainty. There's always going to be things that maybe scare us, but our reaction to it can be very different. My reaction to fear as a 5 year old is very different than my reaction to fear as a 49-year-old because I have a lot of more options. I have a lot more opportunities. I can move away from something. I can tell something to stop. I'm way more powerful at 49 than I was at 5. And so whenever we can get these, parts of us that are stuck in these cycles of fear and uncertainty or insecurity, then we're able to really show up in life, truly us, instead of a version of us that got stuck in an earlier time in our life that just didn't ever heal.
Mm, absolutely. So you do a lot with clients, you work with people all the time. My guess is you're draining your cup, you're giving to other people. How do you keep your cup full? How do you take care of yourself? What do your daily rituals, morning, evening routines look like so you're able to actually give and serve in the way that you want to?
Awesome. Yeah, because I truly believe that you have to fill back up, that you cannot just give, 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 because at some point you're going to end up with nothing to give. And then you're going to be depleted yourself. And that creates for me a vicious cycle of life because I lived that way for so long. And so I'm really careful not to overgive. So I don't, I limit my time with clients like daily. I typically don't see over 4 because like that's a lot. And
Mhm.
but I start every morning out with grounding. Right now it's really cold where I live, and so I have a grounding mat that I use in my office. And I also sleep on a grounding sheet. So I make sure that I am expressing all of that energy that I received in the day out every day. And that's really good. And that's what grounding does for you. It allows your body to get back to a neutral state so that you are not holding on to other people's stuff or stuff that even you picked up just from the energy that's out in the world. We got EMFs and all that stuff. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I have a nightly ritual where I take a hot bath with magnesium flakes and really soak and get myself ready for a good night's sleep because good night's sleep is so important.
Mm,
I've learned at my age that sleep is more important than diet. Like getting enough hours of sleep and getting good sleep is super, super powerful. So, those are some really simple things. I also love to read. So, I read books that I enjoy, read things that fill my heart with joy. Um, and engaging with my family and friends, like spending time with the people that you love, not the people that you have to be around. So I choose people that I want to be around. I choose the people that I have at my house or things like that. And so I spend time doing that. Having fun is always a really good thing, putting lots of fun in your life, because life can be difficult if you're just focused on work and there's no play. So that, and I love to vacation. So my husband and I take at least 3 vacations a year. And so we definitely know how to do that.
very good. That's awesome. I think one thing that people struggle with, because again, we are both coaches, we do similar work, different, but similar. And consistency and motivation seems to always be a theme that comes up for people. How do you keep people consistent, motivated, doing the things along their journey to actually help them grow and get to where they need to get to or want to get to?
Yeah. And I would say you're so right because, so many people, I mean, me included, I've bought programs in the past and I started it really hot and heavy. And then something happens in life where it throws me off of my routine. And then it's really hard to get back on it. I mean, how many people have a resolution at the end, at the beginning of the year, or things I'm going to change or add or take away out of my life. And then, a few months in, we're back to the way that we were. And so I do believe that consistency is key, but I also believe that not overloading yourself in the beginning is really important. So starting off at a pace that you can be consistent with and being honest with yourself, and not trying to change too many things or take away or add too many things at one time. So we've designed our program, and I'm sure you do this with yours too, where you just do it in bite-sized chunks. So each week they're given, their assignments or things to do, and they're something that can be done within an hour of time in the whole week. So I think that that's really important is, first of all, picking things out that you're going to do or not do that you can be consistent with. When I started working out, I didn't try to work out an hour a time. Like I wouldn't do an hour setting for working out. I started out with 10 minutes. I started out with something that I could do, and then I can build over that. I started out with once a week. I didn't even do it multiple times a week. Like I did it where I could create some type of consistency. And so being honest with yourself, what does that look like? If it's, trying to ground once a week, try that. If it's grounding for 1 minute a day, try that. Like whatever it is that works for you, add or take away those things, but make sure it's bite-sized chunks. Don't try to eat the elephant in one bite.
Absolutely. A lot of times people will think about like coaching, like I believe everybody needs a coach. I have multiple. I have my own high performance coach. I decided I wanted to do a bodybuilding competition, literally decided next day, found a coach, next day started because I just know myself at this point that I need that extra support for everything. But some people are quite skeptical, right? They're a little bit cynical or resistant to this idea of like getting a coach. What would you say to them if they're like, oh, I'm not really sure, or they have all these beliefs in their head that doesn't support the fact that we all kind of do need that support. And if we don't have it in our lives, it's okay to invest in that to be able to help ourselves, grow, change our beliefs, develop more of our spiritual selves insides. What would you say to them?
So, I've tried to do it by myself for a long time, and I'm sure you tried at some point too, Jess, to do things by yourself, and you realize that I can go way faster you know, and do it right the first time if I get a coach. Because if I'm trying to do something I've never done before, don't I want someone who's been there and done it and you know, ace the journey? They're sitting in victory. Don't I want them to tell me how they did it? Yeah, of course. And of course, there's an investment in having a coach. But if you look at it in the span of how much time and energy that you're going to spend doing it by yourself, it's way cheaper to get a coach. Absolutely. And so I would encourage you, if you're looking to make big changes, like entering a bodybuilding contest, heck yeah, of course you need a coach for that. Healing your
Right.
heart, changing your life, having, changing performance, whatever it is in your life that you're wanting to do, I would say absolutely find you a good coach. And to me, a good coach is not somebody who is going um to beat you over the head. Like you don't need that. You need somebody that's going to like learn you, understand you, and coach you in a way that you need because everybody is very different. And so finding somebody that is willing to get to know you and apply their program to your personality is really, really important. Don't just try to fit yourself into, somebody else's program. I would encourage you to, have a meeting with that person and see if they're a right fit for you because not everybody's a right fit for everybody. Like there are coaches out there that are amazing, but they're not the right coach for me. And I
Mhm.
would encourage each one of, y'all to do the same thing, to find somebody that you can trust and that sees you and hears you and is the right person for the journey that you're on.
Absolutely. My One of my best friends and I, we're training for a half Ironman or an Ironman actually, but because of COVID,
Wow.
we didn't quite get there a few years ago. And she did the research. She got herself a coach, and the coach was great. Energetically, probably wasn't my best match, but she had loved the coach. So it's like we need these different things and different energies. And I know before even starting this interview, you wanted to meet me to see what my energy was. Like that was just, are we on the same page? Do we vibe? Like these types of things are really important. And you can find that with coaches as well. What's one lesson you've learned in your work, in your life, in your business that has just profoundly changed and shaped who you are?
Hmm.
Or many?
So for me, the one lesson I think that is the most important is so I have a co-founder, we have a business partner, and learning that communication is key and really understanding what someone else means when they say what they say is really important because, like I said, we all have a different reality that we're seeing life through. And so we hear things that aren't being said, both good and bad. And so there's lots of misunderstandings that happen along the way. And I've learned that it's much easier in the beginning to ask, what did you mean by that? Or can you clarify what you mean by that? And it may sound redundant. You have to do it a lot, but it's way easier to do that in the beginning than to go back and, you know, unwind or rewind back to how did we get here, you know?
Mm,
So, just alleviating some of the problems. And I think that happens in business, in friendships, in relationships, that we have these stories that we make up within our head that somebody else meant or didn't mean. And then next thing you know, we are, sitting here nursing a resentment or a grudge or frustration. And so, yeah, that's just one of the main things. It's like ask and re-ask and make sure that you're on the same page before you begin to move forward in these different things. I mean, that goes with just any situation.
absolutely. I know sometimes I'll read a message in a text and then I won't show up at the same time, or the person didn't show up. This happened just the other day. It didn't show up to the same time that we had like a call set. And I was like, I really don't know how. And then I reread it and I was like, oh, I can see how you meant that. But it was a time zone thing. And I completely saw it how I wanted to see it. And it just wasn't the way it was. And that happens a lot, not by ill intent by any means. What if somebody was just at the beginning of their journey? What advice would you give them to kind of help encourage them or nudge them or push them into the direction of actually taking action to make change? Because behavior change doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not something that's quick or easy. What advice would you give them to kind of help encourage them and support them at the beginning of their journey?
I would first congratulate them because it's a really big deal to take the step to even begin to look inside to see who you are and to begin to love yourself into transformation. So that's first thing. It's just really congratulating them because it is a big step. So many people choose not to. And so when someone does, it's a really big deal. And I would say, along that same line, like celebrate your wins. Like no matter how little, celebrate them. And whenever, you feel like you have backtracked because something happens that there's a reaction or you showed up in a different state of who you wanted to be or whatever happens, that to remember that everything is growth. And I look at it like that because had that reaction not showed up, I wouldn't have known that I needed to work on that. And so giving yourself, from that perspective, like permission to feel crazy, like feel like you're all these things are happening all at the same time and just celebrating the micro wins, celebrating the wins. And then when you feel like you've backtracked, know that it's progress because progress is going to happen. If you see the thing that pops up, now you get to work on it. And so you can look at it from that perspective instead of feeling like it's daunting. This is not working. I'm never going to change. You can change the perspective of, wow, it's just more opportunity for me to learn and grow and determine, what it is that my heart needs. What is it that I need in this situation?
Absolutely. As a growth coach and spiritual mentor, what is your ultimate goal or vision?
Yeah, my ultimate goal, and I think I kind of said it before, is that number one is that I would, show up in full heart brain coherence, that I would have full present ability within myself, that I wouldn't be pulled off sides, that I wouldn't be triggered. Of course, that's the goal. And I believe one day I'll get there. It might be my last dying breath, but I believe one. But it's also that other people would begin to see just how truly amazing that they are. I think that we have all bought into the lie that we need to do and show up and do all these things that make other people happy. And the truth is that you yourself, who you were created as, is amazing. And if you could learn to show up just as that person, that is a win for me. And if I could, every person that I work with, that's my goal, is that they would begin to see themselves as this amazing creation that was created. There's nobody like them, never has been anybody like them. And for them to be able to step out, not in arrogance, but in awareness that they bring such greatness to this planet. And for them to walk in that, that's my ultimate goal, is for people to see just how amazing that they are and that they are so loved, and that literally the universe, God, the quantum field is conspiring to bless them at every turn, every moment, everything that they want to do, every dream that's in their heart, all of that. They all of, want to bless you. They want you to have all of those things. But the first thing we got to do is know who we are, because, just like I said before, distorted energy doesn't get the blessings. Distorted energy gets more distorted energy. But when I show up authentically me, then everything that I have in my heart is attracted to me. It wants to be with me. And so that's financial, that's relationships, that's, good things, that's, all the things.
Mm. Before we kind of wrap up, are there any last words you'd like to share, last messages, last anything that you want your audience, my audience, our audience, the world to know or hear?
Oh, I think that you're a great interviewer. So thank you so much for interviewing me and allowing me to be on your podcast. I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful that we got to know each other. And, honestly, I don't know if there's anything else I'd want anyone to know. I mean, I'm just a normal person who, had it in her heart that she wanted to first change her life, and now she wants to help other people change theirs. And I believe that, as we begin to unlock these truths within us, we each find our purpose. And, your purpose might be totally different from mine and Jess's, but there is something beautiful within you that gets to be unlocked. And I truly believe that whenever we can all be unlocked and we're walking in our greatness, that we'll begin to see the beautiful world that we also desire, where love triumphs, where, people are kind and nurturing and not selfish and self-centered, but there's more of a community aspect instead of an individual one. And, that's my dream, is that we could wake up and see that the world that we're creating is actually a better world than we've ever seen before.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much from my side. I just feel all kinds of filled with love and just I'm sending you the biggest hug
I feel
and
it.
feelings of gratitude. So thank you so much. If someone wanted to get a hold of you or connect with you, how can they do that?
Easiest way to connect with me is to go to our website, theundividedheart.com. And then you can send me a message through there. You can also find me on social media. It's my name, Shauna Fuselier. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes for them because it's impossible for anyone to spell.
It'll be on
Um,
the screen, so they'll see it.
okay, that's on Instagram. Those are probably the best two ways to get a hold of me.
Okay, amazing. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now, but thank you again, and we'll be in touch.